It's day 99, everyone. Day 99 of President Bola Tinubu's administration. One more day left to mark his first 100 days in office. Thanks for joining us on the program. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. We'll begin with updates from India, where President Bola Tinubu arrived Delhi for the G20 Leaders Summit, as well as other engagements. The presidential jet touched down at the Indira Gandhi International Airport, Delhi, at about 6:40 p.m. That's 2:10 p.m. Nigerian time. The president was accompanied by some senior government officials, including ministers and presidential aides. President Tinubu has a number of high-level meetings and engagements with other world leaders, as well as business executives on the sidelines of the summit. President Tinubu will also meet with the Nigerian community in India. Special advisor to the president on media and publicity, Ajuru Ngelale, had earlier disclosed that President Tinubu intends to attract global capital and increase foreign direct investment to the country through the meetings and engagements. So what's the significance of the G20 Summit to Nigeria's economy? We'll raise that up with my guest shortly. In the meantime, let's look at some of the economic policies of President Bola Tinubu in the last 100 days. Subsidy is gone. I know you're familiar with that phrase. The removal of fuel subsidy and naira floating policies have led to 24.08% of July's inflation figure. On 14th June 2023, CBN instructed the banks to sell forex freely at market-determined rates. And then we saw naira jumped to 950 naira per dollar at the parallel market. Other policies include lifting impediments to a friendly business climate, revenue generation, elimination of multiple taxation, monetary policy reforms, and efforts at improving the ease of doing business. Lately, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister for the Economy, Wale, during the inaugural meeting of the Federal Executive Council, unveiled an 8-point agenda of President Bola Tinubu. He talked about food security, ending poverty, economic growth, job creation, access to capital, improving security, as amongst others.
There will be emphasis on efficiency in government expenditure and similarly effective debt management so that borrowing has linked to it the return on investment. Mr. President changed the country. He turned it around from a path of unsustainability that was threatening the very foundations of the economy.
It is not a loan, it is a forward sale. And forward sale is the easiest deal. You are simply selling your items for tomorrow. And banks don't have problem funding this. So this is not the type of transaction that will ever collapse when it's fully clear that the volume that you are selling are already on the table.
If you look at our tax expenditure report over the past 3-4 years, on the average, we're giving away around 6 trillion naira per annum. That's significant. What we have not been measuring enough is the benefit we are getting from that.
Joining me on the program this evening is Managing Director of Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Bismarck Rewane. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so there are indications Nigeria wants to join the G20. I'd like us to begin from there. We understand that government is making consultations now to determine the benefits and risks of membership. What do you make of this move?
Well, I don't understand the reasoning there. I think for now, the G20 has only one African country, which is South Africa. And South Africa apparently is also a member of the BRICS. So being a member of the G20 does not necessarily bring about any benefits directly. But being present at the table where the matters of global economic architecture and debt architecture are being discussed will not do any harm to Nigeria. So I think fundamentally, Is it in Nigeria's national interest to be a member of a wider group? Yes. Does it bring any benefits to Nigeria economically? Not really. But the truth is that being there in the Committee of Nations means that you are going to be there when matters are being discussed, and also you're going to be there to actually protect and project your national interest.
On the agenda this year is also the possible inclusion of the African Union and giving it voting rights. We understand that the G20 nations already supported this proposal and that there's a decision pending in that regard. Are you saying that there are no substantial benefits for the continent if this happens?
The European Union is a member of the G20, but I'm not saying that being at the table means that you are going to be there when they're discussing things and your input will be actually taken into consideration, but not necessarily. It's not like being a member of a union that brings financial benefit to you. It only means that you are going to be present and you're going to contribute to the discourse, and you're also going to be able to at least stop anything that's negative that's going to come to your area. But African Union is represented by so many countries, and I think being there as a member of the African Union could be helpful. But I don't want anybody to go away with the view that being a member of the G20 will solve your economic problems. You have to go back into history. Why was the G20 set up? The G20 was set up in 1999 as a consequence or as a follow-up after the Asian financial crisis, which actually decimated global financial markets and the Southeast Asian Asian tiger miracle. From that point on,
yes.
From that point on, the G20 has met every year, and today the G20 is responsible for 85% of global output, right? And the almost 65% of global population and 75% of global trade. So being at the table is quite important in terms of when you're talking about global trade, you're talking about global GDP and policies, and then also 66% of global population. If you add Africa with a population of about maybe 1.3 trillion people, that brings that particular organization to over 70% of global, 75% of global population. It's very important. But I don't want us to think that being a member or not being a member is detrimental to our economic liberation. I don't think so.
It's the first time the G20 Summit will be holding in India. We understand that the president's visit to India is at the instance of the invitation from the country's prime minister himself. Already, this government has been talking about the need for foreign direct investment and attracting global capital. And we understand that there will be other sideline meetings. Already, India is one of the biggest export destinations for Nigeria. But how optimistic are you about these other sideline events, particularly when you consider that it's not the first time a Nigerian president is attending such summit?
Well, let us try to make it clear. A visit to India without the G20 meeting would have been necessary. For India is our largest trading partner. India has significant interests in Africa. India has certain similarities in terms of poverty profile and congestion and population growth rate. So there are similarities. India has a massive Christian, Hindu, and Muslim population. India is quite traditional, the Maharajas and all of that. India has a massive cash economy, just like Nigeria had a massive cash economy before doing all these things. But India is a produced wealth economy rather than a natural wealth economy. Nigeria is a natural wealth economy. The bulk of its wealth comes from extractive industry, from oil, gas, and so on. So there's a difference. How to make the Nigerian population productive, how to make the Nigerian population skilled, how to make the Nigerian population technology savvy, challenges that the president and his team will have to consider. And I want to make a point here that foreign direct investment is good, but foreign direct investment of today is a dividend outflow of tomorrow. So first and foremost, you have to make your environment conducive to domestic investment to prevent capital outflows, to international investment to bring international investment, both in form of foreign direct investment on one hand, and two, in terms of foreign portfolio investment. All of these things put together help you to have what we call an investment-led strategy, which will lead to growth and accelerated and sustained growth. But if the proceeds of the growth, if the rewards of the growth, the profits of the growth are not equitably distributed, then you will have that income inequality, which is one of the problems Nigeria is facing today, just like Mexico and South Africa. If you do nothing about making sure that there's fairness and equity in the way opportunities and income are distributed, then you begin to have that a class war between the rich and the poor, between the haves and the have-nots, between the hewers of wood and drawers of water, as they say in the Bible.
Let's leave Delhi for a minute and talk about the Nigerian economy in President Tinubu's first 100 days in office. A major decision was made on his first day that instantly impacted on majority of the people. I'm talking about the full subsidy removal that saw the pump price of petrol jump by over 200%. We've also seen its effects on rising transportation costs, snowballing prices of goods and services, and what have you. Looking back 99 days after, will you say that decision is worth it?
The decision, anything to reduce, and I said it from the beginning, subsidy was not removed, subsidy was reduced. Subsidies are reverse taxes. Anything to reduce subsidies increases the revenue of the government. How the government deploys those resources back towards productive use for the people is the key thing. I have no problems with reduction of subsidies, but the sequencing is what I have. I think that, quite frankly, the programs, not palliatives, mind you, the programs for recycling this money should have taken place simultaneously, if not ahead of the withdrawal of subsidies. So what has happened now, subsidies have been reduced, incomes of the government have increased, but the government has not got the absorptive capacity or the structure to recycle this money quickly enough so that the people, there's a gap. Money stranded is money not available. And when government is deploying this money, if it is not done with a proper governance structure, there'll be leakages. In economics, we say leakages are negative, injections are positive. And therefore, it is important that we know that withdrawing money from the people and without deploying it back into productive use through other means could only lead to what happened in 2012, which there was a reduction in subsidy, followed by a recession, and followed by all sorts of...
So, Mr. Rewane, you keep using the word reduction because you mentioned this as early as June. The subsidy wasn't reduced, but rather the subsidy was reduced and not removed, and that the price of fuel would have been a lot higher than what it is today if it was actually removed. Are you saying government is not being sincere in this regard?
No, they're being sincere. You see, the devil is in the detail.
The details.
If subsidies have been removed completely, the price of petrol here and the price of petrol in Cameroon and Benin Republic would be the same, right? But nobody says subsidy. You move in, directionally you could be right and nominally you could be wrong. Directionally, we've moved in the right direction, right? And as long as you move in that direction, you are reducing the amount of disequilibrium in the economy. When disequilibrium is reduced, then the economy is in balance, right? And you begin to see the benefits of this as you go along. It's not a silver bullet. It's a necessary but not sufficient condition to achieve macroeconomic stability. So, like I said, the idea of reducing subsidies, which means increasing the revenue of the government, and injecting these revenues in a much more efficient manner into the economy to have the impact is what is required, and in a sequence that makes the desired impact, because there are lags between when decisions are made, where the effect is felt, and when the impact is actually becomes optimal. Those are the three things. And I mean, the Nigerian viewers out there who are listening to this program, they're not interested in the dynamic equilibrium. What they're interested in is how will their life and their livelihoods be better off tomorrow? And the question is, are you going to use it to buy rice and give the people, right? Or are you going to use it to invest? Are you going to create a palpable and a positive environment for investment at different levels, so that jobs are created, and you have a Marshall Plan to help the more vulnerable? Well,
interesting. Talking about
that is what is required.
Yes, talking about what Nigerians are really concerned about, particularly their economic well-being. You mentioned that the Nigerian economy is expected to experience some growth in the first quarter of 2024. What happens before that?
Yes. No, but you see, it's cyclical. You're going to be coming out of it. You are going to be coming out of the bottom, right? And you see, I'm assuming that we will trough in the third and fourth quarter, and then the point of inflection will be first quarter of 2024. But you see, the basic infrastructure, or what I would put, the basic structure of the economy and the governance structure, the institutional reform, that means that people can now begin to see and believe in what government is saying, has to be put in place. Government in Nigeria for the past 20, 30 years has had no credibility, it's all sweet, talk is cheap. There's a lot of pronouncements, but the pronouncements have to be followed by institutional reform, has to be followed by clear guidelines and things that people can see. Quite frankly, the Nigerian investor Nigerian consumer more than anything else, are fatigued in the sense that they are facing higher food prices, they are facing higher transport charges, they are facing changes, in currency values, and they are seeing, and they're not, the picture before them is that of very limited upside. So, and in strategy, they say hope is not a strategy, so you need to define it and give people the clear benchmarks of what you are going to do. The question, the straightforward answer is that we must have institutional reform. We must have a team of people who are sound and credible, right? And we must have the policies that can be pushed through, monitored, and measured. What gets measured gets done. So these are the three things.
We already have the team now, Mr. Rewane. The question of whether they are credible or not is perhaps what we'll now find out in the coming days. But one of the counsel you've given to the current administration is the need for the leadership to be truthful about the facts about the country. And we heard the coordinating minister of the economy recently talking about the fact that the last time Nigeria's economy was stable was about a decade ago. You've heard his blueprint, or what he calls his plan for the economy. Was that him listening to your counsel? Do you think we're heading in the right direction?
I think Nigeria, the policy announcements are welcome. The institutional reform is the hard part, because turkeys don't vote for Christmas. So the people that will suffer, the vested interests that will suffer from the reform of the institutional reform that will follow, are not likely to sit back and allow this to happen. So the true test of this is how you can confront ruthlessly the challenges that are going to be posed by the vested interests, who are not going to have, one, who would slow down reform, two, who would actually delay reform, slowing down one, delay it, and probably reverse it because of frustrating this. So there are a lot of vested interests, but I am optimistic that whether we like it or not, the route to reforming institutions, the route to actually transforming this economy is irreversible. It may be slowed down occasionally, but Nigeria must go in that path, and the consequence of not doing the right thing and not doing it at this time will be catastrophic. So it's not even open to debate. It's not open. It's not even an option for the leadership of the country. We must do it right.
I hear you.
Failure to do it right means catastrophe for everybody.
Mr. Waledu is talking about less dependence on borrowing, pushing up revenues, and it's also saying we can increase tax revenue, not necessarily by increasing taxes, but by bringing greater efficiency into it. Do you buy that policy? Is it feasible, and can Nigerians also, work with that?
No, you're talking to the choir. You're preaching to the choir. The reality is that we know this. As we said, it is the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. Let's see it happen. Let's see the results. One, the data integrity is important. Two, the institutional reform is important. Three is that let us see this revenue, obsession with revenue is good, but what are you going to use the revenue to do? Let us see those concessionings. Let us see those public-private partnerships. Let us see the things deploying resources and making it impactful. Don't forget that the entire federal government budget of Nigeria, 20 trillion, let us even go further, maybe 25 trillion or 30 trillion, in a 200 trillion economy, is still less than 10, 15%. It's not going to move the needle. You need that engine, that investment engine, both domestic and international. You need to mobilize savings. I do not agree with the view that interest rates, subsidized interest rates, are going to make us achieve the growth that we need to mobilize savings. National savings is well below where it should be optimally. So you need to mobilize savings. You need to come clean with the Nigerian public as to how much our external reserves are. You need to sell foreign exchange into the market. And I do not think that, I think that we need to review that question of whether we should borrow. You cannot develop at this stage without international and domestic borrowing. But the borrowing has to be used for factors that will increase productivity and used for optimal capital utilization.
I'm afraid we have to go now. We just have about 1 more minute, but I was hoping we could get your contribution as to how much support this current government is getting from other stakeholders. The NLC has yet again embarked on a 2-day warning strike, and the impact of strike on the economy is an entirely different ballgame on its own. But how do you think government can carry on with all of this current, scarcity and hardship that the Nigerian people face? Do you think that they can get some more collaboration from organized labor?
Yes, they can. But I said from the beginning, the sequencing I would have adopted was different. I would have put the palliatives, all the investments ahead, or simultaneously with the reduction in subsidy, not only in the exchange rate, in the petroleum and the custom duty structure. I would have done it, one, so that the people would see, one, that I'm in business. Two, they will get the positive before they get the negative. And I think we are getting there now. So I think sooner or later, we'll get to the point of inflection, which I think will be in the first quarter
of next year.
Yeah.
MD Financial Derivatives Company Limited, Bismarck, Rewane, thank you so much for talking to us on the program this
Thank
evening.
you for having me.
All right, so tomorrow is day 100. What happens after 100? We probably will have to change the name of this show, or keep counting to 1,000 days. Well, you'll find out tomorrow. That's our program today. Watch a repeat broadcast at midnight, and at 6 p.m. Tomorrow, I'm back with another episode. Stay with us.